The first violin lesson. Some teachers will do this differently than I do it. This is my approach. And the goal in this is to get them being able to hold the violin, hold the bow, know which strings are which, understand some basic rhythms, and get the hand frame, particularly in the left hand, started. I would build their pinky heads, which I will show you later. We haven't gotten to that slide yet. So we've already covered this in the first time, but the high dot sticker, the second finger sticker, which is the first finger, we'll use probably a few weeks down the road. I set those up for a kid, make sure they've got a functioning fiddle. Surprisingly, a lot of them don't come to me with good violins. If you are ever thinking of taking up the violin, or anyone in your family is, don't buy from Amazon, don't buy from eBay. I have a 0% success rate of students buying working violins from those two sources. Just absolute trash. You're buying essentially really expensive firewood. And really that comes down to, when you're starting an instrument, you want an instrument that isn't going to fight you. You don't need to buy a Stradivarius as your first violin, but you want something where everything functions, it's in the right place. It isn't going to make the violin, which already has a very high bar of entry in terms of difficulty, just holding the thing takes a long time to learn. Very tricky. There's no reason to add extra complications. And the sad thing is, I have wholesalers that I work with that can sell you a violin probably for less money, less money than some of the people who spend money on very cheap and very bad Amazon violins. Rant over, continuing. Introducing the instrument is the very first thing I do. I'm trying to get them interested in it. I mean, part of the first lesson, generally the kids I've worked with have been coming to their parents and they've seen a violin somewhere and they've wanted to say, oh, can I try that? So there's already a bit of interest there. But I kind of want to build on that, because the more interested they are, the more they practice. The more they practice, the better they get. The better they get, the more they want to keep playing the violin, the more they want to stay with me as a teacher. Everyone wins. They have fun, I have fun, and I make a living. So we've got the violin. I think I ran through that quickly. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll introduce the bow, and I've got a few little jokes that I'll do with that. I'll show them that's the tip of the bow. And I ask them, why do we think we call it the tip? And some of them will be like, because it's at the tip. And I'm like, yep. And some of them won't know that, and I'll just say, oh, because it's the tip. And oh, okay. And I say, we've got the stick of the bow. Why do we call that the stick? And at that point, most of them are like, because it's a stick. And I'm like, yep. And then I'll say, and this is the screw. And why do we call it a screw? And they're like, is it a screw? And I was, for some reason with the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds, this always gets a kick. I'll unscrew the thing all the way. I'll show them it's a screw, and they get a little chuckle out of that, screw it back in. I told them, don't do that at home, but I'm just showing you it's a screw. We don't want them taking apart the instrument. And then I'll say, and this is the frog, and why do they call it the frog? And they'll be like, it's a frog? And I actually say yes. And I have a Baroque bow that is designed from 1700, and I'll show them that the frog is shaped differently on those bows, and I'll say it's shaped the same way as the bottom of a horse's foot, and that part is called the frog, so that's why they called it that. And then they changed the shape of the bow frog, but they didn't change the name. That always gets a laugh. And the last thing I always want to tell them is that bow hair is from a horse. Whoa, it's a horse. How do they have a lot of questions about that? How do they get it from the horse? Is the horse okay? I can tell them it's going to be probably a Mongolian or Siberian horse to get the right thickness. And that usually shocks and surprises, and I have to make sure they don't touch the hair because the oil on their hands doesn't want to get on that. So a lot of this is also about instrument care, because I don't want them dropping the thing. I don't want them breaking the thing. I don't want their parents having to spend money on repairs, because that usually doesn't make people very happy. The ant song is where we get to use the high dot. And this is a really great tune for establishing how the left hand should work, strengthening their left pinky, because whilst we won't be using it for at least a month or two, probably for most kids, it's the weakest finger. Even for adults, it needs a little bit of strengthening, because it's not like we go to the gym and do pinky bicep curls. There's a lot of unnatural things in violin playing that we need to make sure we start to establish the mind to muscle connections for. I'll have them sing it along. It's each and every ant digging in the dirt, dirt, dirt. Oh God. All the way to grease is what I'll say sometimes. Grease, I've learned different versions of it. And it's also a good song for reinforcing the string names. We've got E, E, E plucked on the E string, A, 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 D, 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 G, G, G. And we're learning how to do steady quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. So basic rhythms. And I also like it because we have it do them over the high dot. So they're learning how to play in a higher position already. It's already preparing them for shifting, which they won't need for years down the road. But when they get to there, they won't be in a new zone that they've never played in before. It's adding a little familiarity to a concept that'll come along later on. Line of the day from 2 days ago when I introduced this song to a child was he started chuckling when I said we're going to do the ant song. And I said, do you like ants? And he said, I like to crush ant hills. So he's a wild one. Now we have the Pinky House. This is one of my favorite contraptions. I will probably spend the longest on this slide, and then we will move on from here really quickly. It's a little piece of tape, and it does wonders. When I was doing my teacher training, one of the things I noticed was all the students that we got to observe, very young students of all these really established teachers, had fabulous bow holes. And in my experience, most students I've worked with do not hold the bow properly. And I'm talking not about young children, but I'm talking about like 17, 18-year-olds. Their bow hold is atrocious, and it's one of the things that's preventing them from being able to play properly because, you know, if you're holding it like this, it's going to be really hard to, well, not that bad, but you get the point. Needless to say, all of the teachers in the workshop were like, how do we get that to happen for our students? Please and thank you. So they showed us some of their even younger students who still had the Pinky House on. And it has done wonders. I have had some students come to me who've been working with other teachers previously because they've moved from other provinces. And I put a Pinky House on, and 2 months later I can take it off and a little more rehab, and they've got a good bow hold, and it's been great. I would if I had a little more time, I'd walk you through how to make one, but it's basically you fold a piece of tape, wrap it around your pinky, squish it down there, and then tie it on. It costs like a cent. If they break it, it's fine because you can build another one. They sell these plastic ones, but these are actually nice because they have a little more flexibility, and it's like the training wheels on a bicycle. I love it. We can do some bow games with that. The very last thing I'll tend to do in one of these lessons is, this is the book right here that I teach beginners out of. Originally it was in German, and they made an English translation around 2008. The Sausman houses are a father-son team. The father was the original German author, and his son is actually he's a Juilliard-trained violinist. He's the distinguished professor of music at the University of Cincinnati. He's a fabulous violin teacher, and he's got a number of really young students on the international competition circuit right now that are winning competitions. So I was like, okay, I should probably see what he has to say about how to teach the violin. And we'll start by, we probably won't play the very first song unless a child comes to me with a background knowledge where they already know how to read notes. We would stick to the ant song for the first lesson, but if they're coming to me and they're like, oh, I already know all the rhythms and the notes, then we'll play through it. But more often than not, we're learning where the note is. So this is our A string. We've got the first 4 songs in this book are the A, E, D, and G songs. It's just basic rhythms on an open string. And cleverly, they put, if you look at the page number here, 7. So by G song, you're on page 9. Within a week or two, they can be on page 10, and you can say, oh, wow, look how smart you are. You're on page 10 already. That's really good. And we do that by big print. And I also try to get them to name some of the monkeys, well, the apes in this case. A for ape, E for elephant. We've got the D dog song and the G goose song. So getting them to name the animals actually tends to make them practice, I find, a little bit more, because I can say, oh, we've got to play, let's see, I had a little girl who named all of her animals Snow, Snowy, Snowflake, or some variation of snow. I think we have Frost for one, so it was, now we're going to play Snow Song. Okay, and that tends to go over pretty well with the younger ones. They kind of stop that when they're about 11 or 12. That's where they don't really buy into that anymore. But younger than that, that tends to help. And that's really how the first lesson tends to go. And then, on to Paganini, and we're good to go. I'll stop sharing. If anyone has any questions, we can throw them into the chat. And yeah,